So, rock and roll, Whiskey Festival. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we'll do over the course of the next hour and a half or so. Might be a bit longer, might be a bit, I mean, I've got a list of timings here, and I had Douglas's introduction from 11 till 12:30. So a bit of filling for the next little while here, but no, I'll tell you we'll go through. So I'll introduce each of the drams and maybe try and tell some stories or give them a little bit of place, a bit of information about the whiskey and why it's been chosen. And then we can spend a little bit of time focusing on the whiskey, tasting the whiskey, which is of course, why we're all here. So there's some fantastic drams, some unbelievable drams here today. Some rare stuff, some single cask stuff, some blended things, some kind of creations, some things that will only be tasted today. So you can't go out and buy these things. They are unique for this masterclass. For you, lucky 250 people, which is what we always like to do here at Bruichladdich for the masterclass. A couple of thank yous as well before I start. So I just want to say again, the place looks amazing. Thanks to the team perched up the top here and everyone, all the helpers, everyone who's come and poured drams at 7 o'clock in the morning. So thank you guys. I would never hear the end of it if I didn't say to John, obviously we've hidden all the vatting area behind us here, but just so you all know, it's all been painted. John spent a long time painting the wall there on the outside and the inside. So thank you, John, for that. There you go. Let's hope the whiskey gets as much of a round of applause as painting a wall, eh? And yeah, so it's lovely to see some familiar faces. It's really nice for me to have my wife Amy with us as well. She's the luckiest woman on Islay. She knows why. So the only reason I invited Amy was to say that. It goes back to a long way, that one, for Amy and I. But yeah, lots of friends as well, which is really nice. So the first whiskey we're going to taste is, it's quite an interesting one. So our whiskey festival this year, our bottles, our Fèis bottles, we have two, because we're Bruichladdich, we wouldn't want to just have one, let's have two. When we started planning the Whiskey Festival many, many months ago, we didn't know whether we would have a virtual one again, or whether we'd have people here, or maybe some people here, and again, have a virtual thing. So we decided that having two drams would be quite interesting, that kind of played alongside each other. One for our friends who are around the world, and one for folk on site here. And then we decided that's not really very fair, because then people might want to taste both. So we've still developed two, but you can just buy both of them here, and at some point later in the day, you'll be able to get into the ballot for being able to get them online as well. So, two festival drams this year. And usually we'll taste 6 drams, and so if for 2 of them are going to be the festival dram, something in my lineup, something in my kind of repertoire of drams would have to give. And there's a lot of good drams spread around these warehouses here. So I decided what we would do, in the spirit of rock and roll and bringing everything together and having everyone back together again, is we'd combine the 2 festival bottles. So our first dram is pretty unique. You'll only get to taste it this way unless you buy both bottles and mix them together yourselves at home. And feel free to do so, because it's delicious. But our first dram is both our festival bottles. And the reason this works, thinking about what the festival bottle would be, about how we would celebrate, everyone coming back together. It was really all about just people coming together and mixing, and actually we're not going to have a theme. We're not going to have a Bruichladdich only, or a Port Charlotte only, or an Octomore only, or a High Noon, or a Event Horizon, or whatever it would be like that. What we would do was blend. We would mix Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, and Octomore together, because it's about everyone just coming together again, and that's really what we wanted to do. Think about the cask types, across our warehouses here, there's 86,000 or thereabouts casks across our warehouses, which is quite a thought, a lot of whiskey. All of these casks, we have 300 or so different cask types across these different spirit types, with various, just amazing different vintages, so much complexity and choice to choose from. So let's bring together lots of different components. So for that first dram, everything is as we started. It was combining all of those things. And when we were thinking about having the 2 festival bottles, I separated all of those components out. So each of the festival bottles you'll be able to kind of taste later on in the day are components made from Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, and Octomore. The first one, Rock'n'Roll 1.1, is bourbon cask maturation, and it's all Islay-grown barley. The second, Rock'n'Roll 1.2, is wine cask, sherry cask maturation, a blend of different components, Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, Octomore again. And we've gone further afield for our barley. We've gone all the way up to Inverness. We've gone to mainland Scotland grown, not just Islay grown for that one. So our first dram is quite special. It's about combining, because again, I think that's what today is all about. It is just about everyone being together.
And taking microphones off you. There you go, carry on.
I was working it. Oh, fantastic. There you go. I can speak again. I've got 2 hands. Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So, yeah. Let's have our first dram. Let's have a little nose, a little taste. So when we go through this tasting, it might be quite nice to actually, kind of think about the whiskey, look at the tasting, kind of going through the process here. So our 1.1 and our 1.2, our festival combination, it's got a beautiful colour. So again, the 2 whiskies themselves, the 2 bottles are very distinct. The bourbon cask, of course, very light, lovely kind of pale golden colour. And the sherry and wine cask, the 1.2, is a lot darker, a lot richer, a lot more kind of going on in there, so in terms of the colour. Combining them, you've got a lovely balance, a lovely kind of deep golden colour. And on the nose, oh man, a lovely balance of peat. It's definitely there, but it's not overpowering. It's fruit, though. There's stone fruit, dried fruit, and this is what we get with the 2 separate bottlings. The first one is about the stone fruit. It's about the apricot. It's about the peach. The 1.2 is all about that kind of dried fruit, that fig, that Christmas cake kind of style, and together they work beautifully. They both come through really, really nicely. I've just remembered, as we do this, one of the things I was going to do, a bit of the housekeeping, was to talk about the drams and actually tell you what they are, because it's not written down on your tasting mats. You've just got 1 to 6. So maybe we'll go back while you're having a little taste, and I'll tell you a little bit about the whiskies we're going to taste today. So the first one we know about. The second whiskey we'll taste is an 18-year-old Bruichladdich. And that's a very special whiskey for me, and I'll tell you that story why, but it's a lovely whiskey to be able to taste, 18-year-old Bruichladdich. It's 50% alcohol. The third dram is a 30-year-old Bruichladdich. At its cask strength, it's 49.2% alcohol, so that's going to be our third dram. Our fourth dram is another 18-year-old, a Port Charlotte 18-year-old. Sherry cask maturation, a really, really lovely kind of exploration into Port Charlotte. It'll be the oldest Port Charlotte that we will have been able to taste with you guys. Our fifth dram, guess what? It's an 18-year-old, because we can't do an 18-year-old Bruichladdich in Port Charlotte and not do an 18-year-old Octomore. So that'll be something to look forward to a little bit later as well. That's quite a special dram. Again, one of the oldest that we'll have been able to taste with you, so very, very exciting. And our last dram, I'll maybe leave till later on, actually. I'll keep that one up the sleeve a little bit. Feel free, if you want to sneak ahead, have a little nose, have a little think about it. Don't shout out. Keep your answers to yourselves. Keep your ideas to yourselves. But I won't tell you exactly what it is just now. So a little bit of housekeeping, just about giving everyone some, so you know what's coming up. So the drams are about 50%. So we'll give you some more information as we go through the whiskies themselves. So coming back to dram number 1, our festival bottle. You give it a movement in the glass, you can see that lovely texture. You've got that lovely stone fruit, that dried fruit. Before we have a little taste of this, hang on, you haven't had a taste yet, have you? Right, everyone who's had a taste, it's time to go, time to leave. No, don't worry about that at all. Listen, when I've been doing whiskey tastings in the past, and I get talking and I start going off on these different tangents, telling stories and giving information, I do sometimes forget to tell people to have a drink. So please feel free to do that. Don't wait for me to tell you. Please feel free to go ahead. So yes, we'll have a little taste, but before we do that, I don't want to dwell on things. Obviously, the last 2 years have been very, very hard for everyone. Everyone in this room, our lives have changed over the last few years, you know, so we all know that. We all experience that in our own ways. And we are here to be able to celebrate being back together, and that's what we want to focus on. But we will all, of course, have had difficult times. There'll be people, I'm sure that all of us who are no longer with us, you know, loved ones who are no longer with us. And I think it would be really nice if we all take a moment just to remember those people, think about those people, and toast their memory. So to absent friends, Slán Java, everybody. Wow. There's a lot going on in that whiskey, isn't there? A huge amount. So again, that's 50% ABV. There's a lovely kind of warming heat on the palate there. The texture is the amazing thing for me in this. The texture is absolutely wonderful. It's viscous, clings to your palate. So much going on again from that stone fruit, but also from the sherry casks that are coming through, the wine casks that are coming through, the oak, the amazing quality of the oak that's giving that amazing texture, that pepperiness on the palate. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. There's a lovely nutty praline note coming through there as well. So there's so, again, from that rich kind of sherry and wine cask matured. There's leather, there's kind of heather flowers, there's this lovely earthy peat smoke, really clean earthy peat smoke. Absolutely beautiful. And if anyone would like, on your taste mat, we have very cleverly put a little kind of flavor map, a little spider diagram. It's only at this point I've realized we haven't given you any pens or pencils. So feel free to take that one home with you, but remember all of these taste notes, okay? So it's a beautiful whiskey. It's a lot going on, really complex, and as I say, it's really about celebrating all these things, bringing everything together, having those layers of complexity. To maybe open that out a little bit, we can add a little splash of water. Just a drop. We'll open it out really, really nicely. And just that little drop will open up these kind of tropical fruits. So the festival bottles we have, they are from kind of 2007 and 2008 vintages, so they're 13 and 14-year-old whiskies. And at that age, with Bruichladdich, Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, and indeed Octomore, you're going to get lots of tropical fruit from the spirit coming through. You know, so that when the spirit is young, it is peaches, it is apples, it is gooseberries. And as it ages, you start to get that fruit becoming a little bit more tropical. So you're going to start to get mango and pineapple and peaches. It's absolutely beautiful. And that little drop of water opens it out really nicely. Oh, an amazing dram. Amazing. Now, looking back to my timings, now that Douglas has thrown us off, it's a beautiful whiskey. That lovely finish, that lovely peat smoke is still in there. So, while we move on to the next whiskey, we'll take a little sip of water, just kind of cleanse some of that peat away. I will move on to a whiskey that is very, very special for me. And maybe this is quite indulgent of me to I'll tell you the stories about this whiskey, but for dram number 2, I'd like to introduce you to a Bruichladdich 18-year-old, 2004 vintage for dram number 2. It's quite a special year for me, because that's the year I first started working at Bruichladdich. So, this is a really nice thing for me. When this spirit was laid down back in 2004, I was just a young, kind of didn't know anything about whiskey, a young guy coming in, and really lucky to have an opportunity to be a tour guide at Bruichladdich. And so, I think, putting this whiskey together, looking around these warehouses and, going down the stalls, you see the years, you see the vintages, and often I start to think about the past. So that, just even though that number, it's 2004, I think about what was happening in 2004. It's 1990, you start thinking about what's happening in 1990. How things have changed, how things have come on, and I think that's it's a wonderful thing. I say maybe this is quite indulgent for me, but nobody else was going to write the script for this morning, so I got that I had to do it. So I'll indulge myself. The other reason we have this 18-year-old, it's not just about me. The other reason we have this is that when I first started working at Bruichladdich, one of the things I started picking up was that actually Bruichladdich is at its peak around about 17, 18 years old. So, of course, that's something we've been able to explore with Bruichladdich. We've had the stocks in the warehouse that have been there from, laid down from years ago. So we've been able to see that, and we know that that's the case, that the balance of flavour is absolutely incredible. And again, please, with this whiskey, just, pick it up, have a nose, have a little taste. Don't wait for me, or you'll be very thirsty. But yeah, the balance of flavour in Bruichladdich, in a bourbon cask, around about 18 years old, is absolutely wonderful. And so that's the real reason we're going to taste this whiskey today. But yeah, as I say, when you start reflecting on those 18 years and that 18 years of the spirit for me as well, you do start thinking about those early days when I started working at the distillery, and again, for me, very exciting times, a very different time for the distillery than it is today. Obviously, very young, just kind of starting up and figuring things out, and the distillery was as well. And it's a really kind of a lovely thing. And as I say, I get quite excited now I'm quite old about history and these kind of things. And sometimes, things have a way of kind of coming together. And in preparation for this whiskey festival, we were actually doing a bit of tidying up, even a few weeks ago, and we had a storage container down in where the tents are in the yard, a storage container that held lots of archive material from one of the offices where we were moving out from. So all of the paperwork and all of the things that had been gathered up and put in boxes and shelved have been put in this container. We won't sort it out straight away, we'll put it in a container, and then we'll get to it. And of course, we have to move the container because all of you lovely people are going to come back, and we want to get the tents up. We want to have the space to kind of entertain everyone, and so now we have to go through the container. And I'm the last one to go through any of my stuff in the container. So I stood a few weeks ago in a shipping container in the yard in the distillery with old boxes of stuff that I have to decide whether we keep them or whether we throw them away. And I'm sure Amy will know that I'm not very good at throwing things away. So I spent a good bit of time looking through every bit of paperwork in there to make sure it was something we needed or we didn't need. And there was some lovely things I found, some old archive things. And I always think, that the things that people write down today, the little notes or the stories or the information they write down today, in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, is going to be a really interesting insight into what was going on at the time. So I made sure I was looking through all of the materials, all of the archive stuff there, and there was one particular folder, or one particular kind of box of this kind of series of boxes, and Ella Edgar, who some of you will know and remember from her time at the distillery. Ella was the kind of distillery PA and all-round kind of fixer, making sure everything happened. Ella had boxes kept of everything. If you want a yeast receipt from 2002, it's in a box. Ella's got it kept. If you want to see the malt lines from 2004, she kept it in a box. If you want to see who applied for a job back in 2002, she's got that too, everything. And that was quite interesting for me because, of course, I started working here in 2004. I'd sent in a CV, and I went looking through Ella's archives back into 2004, and I found my CV. And I looked at it and I thought, well, that's a lot of lies. It's amazing what you can do. I did go to university, not for very long, but I got no qualifications, but it was on the CV, so that was good. But one of the lovely things about that CV was that Ella had kept, and there was a little handwritten note from Jim McEwen, and it said, "Let's have Adam in for a chat." And I thought, that's a really nice thing. So I've kept that. That's a lovely thing to have. But it kind of made me think, about some of these little treasures, some of these little things, these stories, these things that are kept and kind of archived. And actually, there's a human story behind all of these kind of things. And my story at Brooklady wasn't simply that I sent in a CV and Jim liked the look of it because I'd lied and told him I'd been to university and got all these qualifications that I didn't have. He knew that. But it was, let's have Adam in for a look because, and again, this is kind of a lovely story, but my parents, you settle yourselves in, this is a long one. My parents were nurses on the island. They're both retired now. They were nurses on the island, district nurses, so they'd go into people's homes and they would care for people in any kind of situation. They would just, do what they needed to do, look after folk. And one of their patients was Ella Edgar's husband, who was unwell, and they were looking after him, going visiting every day, making sure he was okay, making sure he had what he needed. And Ella was very grateful for all of the care that they had given. And knowing that I had just gone away to university and then come back quite quickly, didn't enjoy it. It's a big old world out there, but I like being on island, so I'll thank you very much. It's the best place in the world, So I came home and I was kind of looking for work and doing bits and pieces, a bit aimless, didn't have much to do, and they were talking to my mum and dad were talking to Ella about this, and she said, "Look, tell him to get a CV in, tell him to come down and see us." And there we are. So there's a lovely thing about Karma where, because my parents had been good and done good, there was an opportunity for me, and I knew that. And so ever since I've come into this distillery, my kind of objective, if you like, has been to kind of repay that faith and again, try and think about Karma again, about doing good things and making good whiskey and all of these kind of things. But it was just a lovely moment when we were thinking about the whiskies, coming up for this 18-year-old, found that CV, and then it does make you think, it does make you reflect. And again, having everyone here in the room, reflecting back on those times where we've been able to do this in the past, and then those times where we haven't been able to do that, it really does make you appreciate what we have. This is a lovely thing, and we always say that whiskey brings people together, and I think that's a lovely kind of thing to think about. What we do here at Brooklady is about bringing people together, and we've done that today, and it's a lovely thing to be able to have everyone in the room. So thank you very much for coming. So yeah, Jim always used to say to me, remember where you come from, and then you'll know where you're going. And it's, when you remember all of these kind of things, it's an emotional thing, but it helps us to think about the future. It helps us to think about where we want to go. It helps me think about how we do things here at Brooklady and about the future and these future generations, and we'll talk a little bit more of that with some of the other drams. Should we have a taste? Anyone thirsty yet? I know I am. Yeah. So our Brooklady 18-year-olds. I've reduced this down to 50% alcohol. So again, we like to think 50%, kind of hold that strength a little bit high. It's a beautiful kind of level, a beautiful kind of way of holding the flavor in the spirit. So 50%. The maturation for this 18-year-old Brooklady, it's about 90% first fill bourbon casks. And there's a little sprinkling, a little bit of magic from some port pipes and some Sauterne casks that have been filled back in 2004. A very, very small amount of each of those, just in there to add a little bit of, dive in, knows it. Let's discover it. Let's think what's in there, but it is absolutely beautiful. I'll move on to my taste notes. For me, this is just was as good as Bruichladdich can be. You know, it's got this lovely vitality at this strength. When I took the samples from the casks, because we fill at high strength, the actual cask strength at 18 years was 60% alcohol. Hugely, hugely strong at that age. We've added a little bit of water to bring it down to 50, open the flavors out, and my God, it is just classic Bruichladdich flavors. It is peach, it is caramel, it's this apricot, like really dried apricot notes. Absolutely wonderful. At this age, we still get that lovely floral character too. There's a lovely balance with the flavors in the cask, the flavors in the spirit are all coming together beautifully. And there's caramel, there's toffee, there's coconut coming from the wood, a little touch of vanilla. Absolutely incredible. Tropical fruit, mango, and those are going to come on the taste as well. So let's have a little taste. So, Slàinte, everyone. I mean, here we are, 11:40 in the morning. We're on our second dram. It feels really good, doesn't it? It feels really, really nice. It's about right. Oh, and it's only going to get better. But no, it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. A lovely whiskey, a lovely moment. That 18 years, it's a really, really special time. Just kind of that peak. As I say, when I first started working here and I was soaking up all the information, that was one of the things that Bruichladdich, kind of 17, 18 years old, that's it at its peak. And I think that is absolutely Bruichladdich at its peak. Beautiful expression, lovely balance. So, we'll enjoy that for a second. And I believe between the second and the third drams, Douglas is coming up for a song. You're singing, Douglas? Excellent. So there we go. So listen, thank you for that, for indulging me with that story and thinking about that. And I think that 18 years is a really kind of significant moment. And so that's why we're tasting the 18 of the Bruichladdich. We'll taste it for the Port Charlotte and we'll taste it for the Octomore too, because it's a lovely balance of flavour in that spirit. Before we do that, is everyone ready for dram number 3? Yeah. Yes? Excellent. Excellent. So dram number 3, it's a 30-year-old Bruichladdich, which again is not a bad dram for a Sunday morning. The 30-year-old again for me is... not every whiskey can be a 30-year-old. Not every whiskey will fill a cask and stay that length of time in the cask. Obviously, they will peak at different times. So for whiskey to be at this age and to be as beautiful and as delicate and as aromatic as this, it's a really, really special spirit, and it's a really, really special cask. It's a really special maturation. You know, things happen over those 30 years. No one just forgets about that whiskey. It's looked after. But really, for me, this is about looking back. This is a legacy whiskey. Okay, so this is whiskey that was not made by the post 2001 team, if you like. This is made from in a different time, a different era of the distillery's history. And again, for me, being interested in the history and thinking about those times, when you think back to 1992, when this distillery was this spirit was distilled, this whiskey was distilled. 1992 is a very different time. Again, from my point of view, I was 9 years old. So my view on this whiskey, when this was laid down into cask, would be very different. I used to go past the distillery every morning and every night on my way to and from Port Charlotte Primary School, oblivious to what was going on in here. There was just big white walls and a big gate and chains along the front. And no one was allowed in, plant closed, all that kind of thing. Oblivious to what was going on, and yet I went past day in, day out. And all the people who were making the whiskey were probably oblivious to me as well, And yet, here we are, standing here with this whiskey. So it's amazing how things come together, how things kind of change with time. But again, I'd like to, I like to kind of draw inspiration from this whiskey in many ways. Because we love this distillery today. I mean, look at this. You know, look at what we've got here. We've got people who, again, there's lots of people, Christy, Douglas, Simon, there's the people, Evald, there's loads of people around who love this distillery and tell the story of this distillery and bring it to life, you know, around the world. And, you know, we employ so many people here. We do so many things. We don't just go through the motions making our whiskey. We make Bruichladdich, we make Port Charlotte, we make Octomore, we explore barley varieties, we kind of bring growing barley back to the islands. You know, we do all these amazing things. It's so much love and energy is poured into this whiskey and into this distillery. It's an amazing thing. But back in 1992, when this distillery, this whiskey was being distilled, that same love, that same passion wasn't there in the owners of the distillery at the time. But it was there in the people, and the men who were making this whiskey. And that's why it tastes so good. So we have a little nose and a little taste. In fact, let's just raise a toast to those men who were making this whiskey back in 1992, because it's absolutely unbelievable. Some of them, or one of them, the Budgie, is still here making whiskey today. But all those people have now moved on. But they love this whiskey. It's a heavenly whiskey. Beautiful expression of Bruichladdich. But again, thinking about that time, those people who day in, day out came in and distilled this whiskey and filled it into casks, not knowing what it would become. Guys like the late Duncan McGilvery, who Duncan used to say, Duncan had been at the distillery since, I think, 1974. And he'd been, each time the distillery had closed in the past, Duncan had been laid off. And each time it reopened, Duncan came back. And Duncan always used to say that he'd had more comebacks than Frank Sinatra. He had, and the reason he did that was the love of the distillery, the love of the place. Even though it didn't have the amazing kind of things that we have today, that love and that dedication and you know, the will to show it in the way that we do today and promote it as a single malt that is just absolutely incredible. It was about the place, it was about the people, it was about producing something that we hold in our hands today. It's about producing something that you could have absolute pride in, you could be a part of. And I think that's a message that I hold with me all the time. When I look around these warehouses and I see that spirit, it's a message I hold with me. And I think back to those people, and I think back to what we have to do in this distillery. It's about promoting, it's about talking about all the amazing things we do, it's about making amazing whiskey, and also championing these people and respecting our history, respecting our past, and taking that into the future so that these people are not forgotten. Because that's one of the amazing things about whiskey. You can time travel. You know, you can touch something that was made, you can taste something that was made 30 years ago. It's an amazing thing, and it tastes fantastic. So for me, again, as a youngster going past the distillery every day, I feel tremendous pride in being able to stand here with a product of someone else's labor, basically, you know, but being able to promote it and talk about that and pay homage to those people. And the amazing gift that we have as distillers, that all of the team here have, is that what we are laying down today, what is being filled into casks today, is going to be for someone else to stand in 30 years and taste and hopefully, you know, pay respect to what we've been doing, because again, what we do is put our heart and our soul into this whiskey. Day in, day out, rain, shine, doesn't matter. Every single drop of whiskey that we make means something to someone sometime. And with that, I think it tastes even nicer. So, let's have another little taste. We'll have a little taste, a little look through some of the taste notes. It's very important to think about how we taste as well, you know, what we're picking up, respecting this whiskey. On the nose. Oh, just incredible. Now, bourbon cask maturation, there's two casks. I'll give you a little bit of the details of this whiskey. There's bourbon cask maturation predominantly. But around about 2007, we took some of this 1992 and recast it into some rum casks. So So I've used a little bit of that whiskey and blended it in here as well, and that rum cask gives you a little bit of spice. So when you go back and nose that again, you pick up that lovely lightness, that lovely kind of light aromas, a little bit of wood spice coming through, a little bit of that rum influence in there, a little bit of that oak, that caramel, that vanilla. Absolutely beautiful. It's a lovely balance. Coconut, lemon meringue pie, little nutty kind of elements coming through there as well. Really delicate, really gentle. Again, a beautiful expression. And on the finish, so last night, of course, as I'm putting my preparations together for this, wasn't panicking, honestly. Oh dear, thank you, yes. In a complete panic. I've not done this for like 2 years, come on. There's 250 of you and one of me. Come on, of course I'm panicking. So as I'm panicking, and late last night, tasting these whiskies, thinking about the flavors, there was a moment after I'd put some taste notes together and thinking about those tropical flavors, that pineapple, that mango, that lovely floral creaminess that comes through in this whiskey. And I thought, well, that's it. I've got that 30-year-old. That's beautiful. I put that down. And I sat back. And of course, because I was procrastinating, I checked out the Champions League score and had a look to see what that was. And as I was reading the report there, I started to get this flavor, maybe you guys are starting to get it now, of chocolate limes coming through on the palate, but it took like 5 minutes after tasting the dram for that flavor to come through, so that finish is incredible. But that lovely citrusy thing that Bruichladdich always has weaving through it, that lovely citrus there, that chocolate, it'll just start to come. If you haven't got it, it may come. Or you've no idea what chocolate limes are, which is fine. It's fine. Everyone has their own frame of reference, of course. I always think back, I mean, it's great to see Koichi here as well, and I always think back to when Koichi was here. So Koichi, for those of you who don't know, Koichi is a very famous, he's a Bruichladdich legend. And as Douglas said, he came to visit us for a day. I believe, Koichi, you were going to travel around every distillery in Scotland? That was your aim? Yep. And so he came to Bruichladdich to do the tour, to tick off Bruichladdich, and stayed for 6 months, which is quite incredible. So Koichi has done festivals. This is not his first festival. He's painted the place. He's rolled barrels. He's done everything for us. And I like to think that with Koichi now he's kind of half Scottish. Yeah. The good half. Yeah. And I think that there's something about when I talk about these different kind of flavor references and chocolate limes that I'm sure Koichi doesn't know what chocolate limes are or have the same sweets that we have, and everyone of course is different. So that's a thing to kind of think about as well. But so when I talk about these taste notes, when I talk about these whiskies, maybe that's some of the things that I pick up. But you guys have got your own things. You've got your own frame of reference, your own tasting kind of repertoire, your own bank or memory of flavors. So you'll get different things in here as well. It's not about getting exactly the same as what I taste. So we're almost at 12 o'clock. So time for another dram, I would think. That might be the way to do it. Sunday morning, 3 drams in, spot on, absolutely superb. So dram number 4, okay? Dram number 4 is a Port Charlotte 18-year-old. So that kind of theme I picked up on that 18-year-old and why that's obviously important for me, but actually for the spirit, for the whiskey. It's a really, really interesting age. And with Bruichladdich, we've known that. As I say, when I was first in the gate and learning about Bruichladdich whiskey, that was a thing that people said. Bruichladdich at 18 is at its peak. So we know that. We've covered that. With Port Charlotte at 18, we don't know that. Because Port Charlotte, of course, is new. I mean, it's 21 years old, the oldest Port Charlotte, but still, that's new for whiskey, you know. Again, we think about 30-year-olds and all these kind of things. Think about 1881, of course, the date the distillery was founded, and the iPhone passcode to everyone who works here, if you find a form. And it actually is as well, so, you know, I shouldn't say that. But with Port Charlotte, with a new spirit, where is that sweet spot? Where is that kind of point? We don't know. So this is a really kind of exciting thing, and why I wanted to put this 18-year-old Port Charlotte into the tasting lineup, because I think this is the oldest Port Charlotte we will ever have tasted. You know, and that's quite an amazing thing, an 18-year-old Port Charlotte. There's a lot of time, a lot of water passed under that bridge in those 18 years. And it's amazing to see how that whiskey goes. We're still learning, we're still figuring all of this out. So our oldest Port Charlotte so far. And we know, if you guys are Bruichladdich fans, and I guess if you're sitting here, you are Bruichladdich fans, age does not signify quality. We never use that to define what a good whiskey is. But it's a factor, and now we're able to explore it, now we're able to do that. But of course, it just takes time for us to get there, you know, 18 years. I've changed a lot in 18 years, and it looks like, I think that's future Adam over here. It looks like I'm going to change quite a lot as well, so I don't know when it goes rapidly grey, but it's starting to now. But yeah, 18 years, it's a long time, and yet for whiskey, it's still relatively young. So it doesn't signify quality, but it does give us an interesting kind of look at how the whiskey develops, how it matures, how we change as people. We all change, we all develop. Whiskey does the same. That slow, day in, day out breathing, maturation, just that act, that time has such an amazing effect on the whiskey. It's not all about the wood, it's not all about the cask and how fresh it is. It's about the time as well. It's about all of these factors coming together. So it's really nice to be able to taste this. Now, this whiskey, again, is all about blending. Because this Port Charlotte 18 is from 2005, the vintage. If that adds up, maybe 2004. And actually, it was quite hard to blend. I'll tell you a little bit about it. I'll give you some of the details here. So it's a 57.3%, so it's cask strength. Okay. There's only a couple of cask strength whiskies. This is one of them today. It's 57.3%. It's Port Charlotte spirit, of course, and it is a sherry cask maturation, predominantly. When this whiskey was filled into casks, it was filled into a range of different types of sherry casks. And as time went on, it was developing. But in 2016, when we were looking at this whiskey, it hadn't really developed the way we wanted it to. So we recast it into a batch of new sherry casks. Casks that came from bodega down in Jerez called Fernando de Castilla, who I'm sure I will have spoken about before and you'll be familiar with. But we filled some Oloroso, some PX, some Fino casks, some Amontillado casks. And actually, we also filled some virgin oak casks as well. Put them to the side. So we had changed the spirit. We'd brought it into new casks to change that maturation, to bring us some more flavour from the wood. And coming to put this whiskey together and going back through these samples, there's a huge range of different flavors. So of course the PX casks give us lots of kind of dried fruit and raisins and kind of sticky, sweet flavors. The Oloroso, a little bit more nutty, a little bit more orangey flavors coming through. The Fino, again, very, very different direction of flavor. And so it was really interesting gathering all these samples together to put together a sherry cask matured Port Charlotte. It didn't really work. They didn't all just come together just like that. We couldn't just, like we'd done before, just mix them all together and put them into different casks. To put them into the bottle, they hadn't all just come together and lined up neatly. And so going back through all the casks, to kind of put a little bit of the Oloroso and kind of tell that story, a little bit of the Fino and tell that story, a little bit of the PX and tell that story. They didn't all just come together. It took a little bit of time, a little bit of blending. And I think that's one of the amazing things that I always like to think about and talk about with whiskeys. It's about blending. The whiskies that we put together, sometimes we taste a single cask. And it is just an amazing single cask. Not every whiskey is good enough to be a single cask. Be good whiskies, but their flavor profile maybe is skewed in one way. And so we need to blend. Blending is so important to bring these flavors together. And understanding all these different flavors and how they work together is really, really key to do it. And so for all of these whiskeys, this Port Charlotte really was one that kept me up, kept me thinking about how we put it together, because it didn't just happen. And over the last few weeks, again, a lot of these drams are a surprise to the team who work here as well. So a lot of, people ask, what's happening with the drams this year? What are you going to choose? I don't know. I keep changing. I keep thinking. But I really wanted to do this Port Charlotte, but I just couldn't get it to come together. Have you guys had a taste? Yeah? Did it come together? Thank God for that, because I thought it did. So just so you know how much I struggled with that whiskey. That's why I'm telling that story. Well, that's it. I appreciate your efforts. It's really good. It's really good. But again, when things come together, when things all come together, it's a really, really lovely moment. And there was that kind of moment where going through the blends, putting these samples together, everything just clicked. And again, it's just about understanding those flavors and analyzing all those whiskeys. It's a beautiful, beautiful expression. We'll have a little taste again. I'm sure that nobody has waited for me. We'll have a little taste, and this is again at cask. This will need a little bit of water to add to as well, so nice to do that as well. The color is beautiful. Again, the richness of those sherry casks gives us that lovely depth of color. The ABV is 57.3%, so it's the strongest of the whiskies we'll taste today. The color is absolutely incredible, as I say. The texture, because we haven't reduced it, the texture in the glass is unbelievable. So the legs are really viscous, really, really thick. And the nose is incredible. It's all about the oak. It's about that lovely balance. We get those nutty Oloroso notes, those lovely kind of raisin sweet notes from the PX, that fig, that date syrup, that lovely sweetness. Absolutely beautiful. If we have a little taste, I'll have a taste. You guys have had some, that's okay. The balance is just beautiful. Absolutely incredible. It takes a little while, but all of a sudden you start to get this lovely kind of nutty, and that's lovely sweet, nutty kind of flavors coming together. Cinder toffee, kind of burnt sugar, leather, a lovely smoke, that lovely subtle Port Charlotte smoke, nice and dry. Absolutely beautiful. The smoke starts to come through more with a little bit of time. Standing up to those sherry casks really, really nicely. A really beautiful, beautiful expression. Wow. Absolutely incredible. So as the Port Charlotte's 18 in those sherry casks, a really interesting kind of unique expression of Bruichladdich. Would it be something you guys would want to drink again? Yeah? Yeah? No? No? Okay. Oh, that's fine. Just an idea. Just an idea. That's okay. You never know. You never know. In the future, who knows? So, moving along a little bit, we've tasted our Bruichladdich 18-year-olds. We've tasted our Port Charlotte 18-year-olds. We can't leave out Octomore. We have to have an 18-year-old Octomore. So, dram number 5 is an 18-year-old Octomore. This is really unique, okay? We only have 3 casks of this. And I emptied quite a bit out of it so we could all taste it, okay? So it's a really, really unique moment. Octomore is, as we all know, it's iconic, it's special, it's unique, it's incredible. But this dram has a really unusual nose. A really unusual nose. But before we get to taste the whiskey, again, you guys can taste the whiskey. It's the oldest Octomore we have ever seen. So I don't want to hold you guys back from tasting this. You know, have a little taste. Have a little nose. If ever we thought that time in a cask would diminish the level of phenols, it hasn't. It really, really hasn't. So much smoke still in that. 18 years old. The ppm, the phenol content on the malt for this Octomore was 140 ppm. And it still tastes like that today. Absolutely incredible. Now, I've told my story with the 18-year-old Bruichladdich and a bit about the blending with the Port Charlotte 18-year-old. With the Octomore 18-year-old, I can't run out of stories. Which is a shame because actually 2022 is Scotland's Year of Stories. And there is nothing better really than a few drams and a few stories. They go hand in hand, and I'm not a great storyteller, I'm afraid. No, I'm not. It's very kind of you, but you've all had a few drams, so I don't trust your judgment, okay? There's a legacy in this company and on this island of just amazing storytellers, and so I compare myself to Jim McEwen, Duncan McGilvery, who tell amazing stories, and I can't tell stories the way they can. But I do want to kind of drop in a few stories because I think when you have a few drams and you want to tell a few stories, I think it's a really nice thing. And I was thinking back over 18 years. God, I must have some stories. And I do. And then I thought, I'll have a wee think about what stories I could tell. And then I thought I probably can't tell some of them because, there's people I would tell them about who are still here, and then they maybe get in a bit of trouble. I don't know. And then I thought, well, maybe I'll think of some other stories. And I thought, I'll get into trouble if I tell those, so I won't tell any of those stories either. So there's one or two kind of quick ones I was thinking of that, again, just to kind of talk about some of the people who again, over the years have just brief stories. Duncan McGilvery, the late Duncan McGilvery. It's always good to tell a wee story about Duncan. Duncan was an amazing man, absolutely incredible man. The kind of guy that would just look at something and know how to fix it, whether that be a person or whether that be a bit of machinery or whatever it was. Duncan had time for everyone, just an amazing man. And again, a little bit about my story, but when I started working here in 2004, I only lasted a year. And then I left. I decided I would go off and try something else, and so I left the distillery and then realized I had done a very, very stupid thing, and it took me a year before I was able to get back to Bruichladdich. I was very lucky. I was given by Simon a kind of an opportunity just for a few months to help out pre-festival, and that few months is still going on. So hopefully that'll continue. But did you sign a contract eventually? Eventually, I did. Yes, I did. Yeah. So that few months went on, and when I first arrived back, we were helping set up a festival, and I came in and we got everything sort of festival. Everything was kind of great, and I'd been gardening. I'd been out, kind of cutting grass and doing bits and pieces, and kind of hard work. So I had a pair of boots, steel toe cap boots. And I brought them with me from the garden. I brought them into the distillery because, of course, you need steel toe cap boots for all these kind of things. And then eventually, after that kind of few months had turned into a job, and I started working in the warehouse. Duncan kind of looked, right, we better kit you out with some stuff now. You're a warehouseman. And he looked at my boots and he said, "Oh, good, you've got steel toe caps." And he knew that because he could see them through the leather had all worn away. So he said, I don't need to get you any boots then. That's great. That's fantastic. And I also inherited a pair of Duncan's old gloves because we don't need new ones. We'll just we use the old ones. So Duncan was always really good at kind of reusing, whether it be something going wrong with a boiler, he'd find something, he'd fix it out, he'd make it go, or whether it was a pair of boots, he'd get the most out of everything. And a very kind of talented man that way. And I started thinking about some of these kind of things as well, with the gloves and the pair of gloves that I had inherited. They were both rights. They were both for the right hand. But Duncan had an answer. If you turn it upside down, you've got a left as well. So there you go. I'm pleased to see it. I think the warehouse guys have disappeared now, but we don't do that anymore. We have good gloves. We're not as stingy with the gloves now. So Duncan was very tight with these kind of things, but amazing man. Then of course you think about some of these things. We're painting the distillery, and years ago that was done by us. So when our production level was a lot lower, we'd be out painting in between different things and painting the distillery. And now we get McEachran Brothers in to do that for us, a local team, and they paint it, and it's quite nice not having to paint. And that's another story about Koichi, actually, painting the distillery. Because we thought he'd gone grey, we thought he had a big fright, but it was just paint all over his hair because he was getting paint going all over the place. I'm pretty sure he's still got his boiler suit from doing that as well. But painted the distillery one day, and of course it was usually the warehouse guys, so us, the warehouse guys in there. And there was one day we were painting the distillery around by the still house, and I'm sure when you've been through the still house you can see there's a big window at the end. So when you look at the 2 rows of stills on each side, on the gable end there's a big picture, a big window. And one of the other warehouse guys, Grant McClellan, and I were painting that one day. We were painting the outside wall, and the scaffold was up, and we were climbing up, and we've been painting for weeks, and covered in paint, and every 2 minutes somebody will walk past and go, "Oh, you missed a bit." Yeah, that's it. And Grant didn't like that very much. And as we were climbing up the scaffold and painting away, the budgie, did everyone know the budgie? Yeah, everyone knows the budgie. Budgie's one of our stillmen, for those of you who don't know. Budgie's been here since 1989, although it does feel longer. Budgie was there to give us some encouragement after weeks of painting, and Budgie kind of leaned out the window at the end of the still house, and he looked and he saw me on the scaffold. He goes, "Oh, you've missed a bit." Unbeknownst to Budgie, Grant is a bit higher up with a big roller, and he looks down and he sees Budgie's head poking out the window. So he gets the roller and rolls all the way down the front of his face. And it's actually a distillery kind of rule now. If you're painting and Budgie says to you, "You missed a bit," you can throw the bucket of paint at him, you can throw the paintbrush, the whole thing, but nobody says that anymore. So there we go. And I could tell, some of these stories, I could tell, maybe just one more. Yeah. Maybe just one more. I think about another man who has retired from the distillery, a guy called Neil McTaggart. And again, in my early days of the distillery, Duncan would sometimes say, the stills are going to be running on, the marshmen can't stay, because of course, when you have a marshman and a stillman on, they're kind of their buddies, they look after each other. So when everyone else has gone home, and there's 2 people in the distillery kind of making whiskey, they're kind of looking after each other. If one man falls down the stairs and he's the only one here, nobody finds him. So the 2 guys have to look after each other. And Duncan would occasionally say to me, "Look, the marshman's not going to be there. Can you go in and sit with Neil just to make sure there's somebody there with him?" Absolutely, a bit of overtime, no problem. And Neil's a lovely guy. I've known Neil a long time. And again, as a youngster, it's just great to be in the still house and be around all of these kind of things. So one Friday night, I go in about, 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I'm sitting with Neil, and he's finishing off the stills, and Neil loved to tell stories. And some of them were even true, the Neil stories. Neil spent a long time in the still house by himself, and so I think he would sometimes make up some of the stories. But who am I to say that? Maybe I've just made up these stories. But Neil would tell some stories, and Neil was a wonderful guy, a great stillman, an amazing stillman, and again had been working at Brooklyn since the 60s. He retired back in 2010. So I just knew that I could kind of soak up loads of information and things from Neil. I didn't know how the stills ran, I didn't know about the mashing at that point. I was kind of fresh in, but just loved being there, sitting with Neil. And we would sit, there was an old kind of park bench as the seat, that was against the wall. So Neil and I would be sitting on this park bench, and it was really, really uncomfortable, which is why nobody sat there. Everyone was all busy doing something, so there's a good lesson in there. But really sitting on this bench and listening to Neil, and he'd tell these stories, and all of Neil's stories seemed to end up the same way, where something would be going wrong. And Duncan would walk in and he'd say, well, I just told him. Oh, I just got him right between the eyes, boy. I just fucking told him. I told him what was right. And it's, all these kind of stories as time went on, Jim would come into the still house and, I just got him. I just had him by the scruff of the neck. His wee legs were just dangling there. I had him like this against the wall, all of these kind of things. And when Neil was telling these stories, which obviously weren't true, when Neil was telling these stories, he would get really, really kind of irate. And Neil was quite a big guy, and he was kind of getting on. And I'm sitting there at, 10, 11 o'clock at night thinking, I don't know CPR. This guy's going red in the face. He's getting all. I'm thinking, what do I do? And this is the days before mobile phones. There was no help coming to help me resuscitate Neil because he was getting all kind of wound up. But there we go. So some of my introduction to Brooklyn and to kind of running the stills and all of these kind of things. But these amazing told stories and these amazing things. So I won't tell any more stories about Neil, or I'll get myself into some more trouble. He'll never speak to me again. But we will have a little taste. We'll go back to this Octomore 18-year-old. Because this Octomore 18-year-old, it's just absolutely incredible. Hopefully you've been enjoying that, as I've been kind of making up some stories for you. Hopefully you've had a little taste. It's absolutely incredible. Oh. A beautiful expression of Octomore, really unique. Some of the taste notes on that cereal note really comes through. That smoke really comes through. Still, at 18 years, that smoke is incredible. It's a lovely, lovely expression. This one, we may not be tasting again. Very, very small amount of that left, so who knows? But a lovely thing to taste all the same. Oh, of course, yes. So the ABV on this was 55.2%. A beautiful expression of Octomore. Now, checking my watch, and for the first time ever, well, we're not finished yet, so I won't say anything. First time, but we might be about right. We'll try our last dram, shall we? That's it. There you go. There's. I can't hear what you guys are saying. So, we'll try our last dram, and by the sounds of that, you're ready to have the last dram so you can leave. I get it. I get it. I'll be quick. So, well, listen, I would love to, but I'm trying to keep on time for a very special reason. I believe that when we are finished today, we will be piped down. The Isla Pipe Band will be there to guide us down. And I don't want you guys to miss that. I'm 50% sure that's happening, so Let's see, so I'll try and keep on time, otherwise they'll go without us. But our last dram is really quite something special. And again, I always like to leave the last dram to have something quite special, something quite unique, something again that we kind of, you guys are the first ones to taste it. And I have actually tasted this whiskey before at the Masterclass or at the festival. So back in 2020, when nobody else was here, we were all in lockdown, and we held our first virtual festival. I think when I was stood in the mash tun doing a tasting, I tasted, I say we, it was only me, I tasted Bruichladdich rye. So we made a rye whiskey a few years ago, back in 2017. And I enjoyed tasting it so much a few years ago that I thought it would be a really nice way to try something really unique, really special that we have here at Bruichladdich. So dram number 6, again, please nose, please taste, don't wait for me. Dram number 6 is Bruichladdich rye whiskey. And I'll give you some of the story, some of the details on this, because it is an amazing story. It's just such a really cool thing that we've been able to do here. And it comes from thank you. It comes from a few different places. So for Alan Logan, production director extraordinaire, and myself, when Jim McEwen left, you know, we had big shoes to fill. And we wanted to kind of make our own mark and do something different, and that kind of spirit of adventure and trying new things. We wanted to we wanted to distill with different types of grain. We want to push that a little bit. We want to find out some more about that. And so that's one side of it. The other side of this rye story is an agricultural story. Because although it feels like we're not really farmers or anything kind of close to that, this is made from barley. You know, we're really closely linked to the agricultural system. And of course, we talk and have talked for years about growing barley on Islay and how amazing that is. And you know what? It is amazing. And it means so much to make whiskey from Islay-grown barley. It's a fantastic thing. But as you learn more about agriculture, as you learn more about farming, you realize that rotation and balance, much like a whiskey, you want to have balance. In farming, you need to have balance. You can take from the soil. Each year, the barley will take from the soil, but you need to put things back. And as we think about the barley drawing some of the nutrients from the soil and, you know, our island, our Islay home, we want to be able to make sure that we're looking after that. And so we need to be really on it. We need to be right at the front of kind of saying, you know what, let's have some rotations. Let's get some good things in to look after the soil, to preserve what we've got. Think about sustainability. That's got to be sustainable. If we have been making whiskey here for 140 years, we want to continue to make whiskey here for another 140 years and the rest. So we need to start taking some action and looking at what we do. And rye on Islay is a really interesting thing. So back in 2017, one of our kind of farming partners, a guy called Andrew Jones, who farms out at Cool, West Coast. Just between Cool Farm and Canada, there's nothing but storms and ocean, so he's right on the edge of the island. And Andrew's been growing rye for us for a few years, and it's been a really interesting thing because he's doing it as a rotational crop. So it's good for his farm to be rotating the soil and putting nutrients back in. Rye will put nutrients back into the soil that barley will take. For us, that's really interesting as well. You know, as a product, you know, rye, people make whiskey out of rye. We can make whiskey out of rye. So we decided we'd give it a go. So Andrew grew this rye for us back in 2017. And it's not 100% rye. So our mash bill here is about 55% rye, 45% malted barley, Islay barley. So this whiskey we have is not a single malt. It is a single grain whiskey made from Islay-grown rye and Islay-grown barley. And it's a pretty unique thing we have in our glass here. And that's very special. However, to get to this point where we are tasting a whiskey at 4 years and 5 months old, so it is very young, but it is very good. To get there was not easy. For those of you who know about making rye, it has a very high beta-glucan content. And if you don't know what that is, Google it, figure it out. We've not got time, okay? But basically it makes when you add the hot water, it makes it very sticky. It doesn't just drain away. With malted barley, you add the hot water in, the maltose, the soluble sugar dissolves, and everything drains away, and everything is cool. The grain itself, the malted barley, has a husk, which gives us a mash bed. The water can filter through. It doesn't just sit on the bottom. Brilliant. Rye doesn't. It's very, very difficult to work with. And so we spent a long time doing our research and working out how we can make a 140-year-old mash tun work the way we want it to do. So Gordon McDougall, who's the distillery manager, assistant distillery manager, him and I spent a long time working out how to run this, and then one Sunday night in December, Gordon and I think, right, you know what, the mashmen are going to do this. We'll do 12-hour shifts alongside them, and we'll help, and we'll figure it out, because we don't know how this is going to be. So on a Sunday night, we watched the very first mash of rye going in, and it is really, really cool. It's gone through the mill. We've got everything sorted, done our little trials. Everything goes into the mash tun. Everything's great. Gordon's doing the first 12-hour shift. So I say, guys, right, I'll leave you to it. I'll be back in the morning, 6 o'clock. See you later on. And leave them to it. So Gordon and Rab, whatever he is, maybe he's not here, Robert McEachran, Marshman at the time, they are set. 10 o'clock at night, all the way through to the morning, they'll get that first mash done. So I get up early, come in at 6 o'clock, ready to see how they're getting on, and there's just a look of horror on their faces. We're doing a 4-ton mash, so like about half the size we normally do, and 8 hours later they are still on the first water. And the first water should take a couple of hours, really, you know. So it was really, really difficult to work with. We just couldn't get the water to drain through. But over the course of that week, we managed to get something together. You know, that stickiness just it wasn't draining through. We managed to underlet water and come up with various methods of doing it. And again, when you're working with a 140-year-old mash tun, it's quite tricky. But we did it. We got there. We got through into the washbacks, and the fermentation was going. Everything started looking really good. We got to the stills. Again, the stills. This should be nice and easy, okay? But the stills was a really interesting bit for me because we didn't have a frame of reference. We just had to make it up as we went along. We did have this idea at one point that we would do 2 mash bills. So the one I mentioned where we have 55% rye, 45% malted barley, we thought we might push it up to 70% rye, really get that peppery, licorice flavor coming through. But the look on those faces when I came in on the Monday morning, no, we'll stick with one ratio, keep it simple. And as the week went on, and the stills started running, and we did a little blind run to build our feints up, and then we got to the point where we were going to take our very first cuts. We were going to do that first distillation. And I know I joked about Budgie before, but he's a stillman with a huge amount of experience and dedication and passion and interest in his job. But there was a lovely moment, again, and Budgie taught me how to run the stills, you know. So in those 18 years I've been here, I spent a bit of time where Budgie taught me how to run those stills in Bruichladdich. And that was a really nice thing to be able to include Budgie in this rye distillation, because, guys, we're almost done. We're almost done. I'll just tell you my last story. So we're there, Budgie and I, going to take our first cut of rye, and it's 3 o'clock on a Thursday morning. So there we are, about to do it. And there was this lovely moment with this spirit where the stills are running, it just starts coming in, and we know that, okay, it's a bit fainty, that's the very beginning, don't want that, that's the foreshot, but we have to keep nosing and sampling and tasting and adding the water and making sure that we know when that spirit is clear. And we just looked at each other at one point, and we thought to ourselves, I said, you know, Budgie, we do a lot of firsts at Bruichladdich, but look, I'm not the first guy to make whiskey on Islay. You know, he taught me, and he's been taught, and there's been whiskey made on this island for hundreds and hundreds of years. So making single malt whiskey on Islay isn't new. But what we were going to do, as soon as that spirit, as soon as we decided we were taking that spirit cut, that is the very first Islay-grown rye produced at a distillery, and that is something really, really special and really, really cool. And here we are. We can taste it. So I did say don't taste this one, and we'll all taste it together. I did say that, right? Yeah. We'll have a little taste, but it's a beautiful expression. It's from a combination of different types of casks. So we've been maturing this whiskey in some first fill bourbon casks and some virgin American oak. And with that virgin oak, we have had it toasted, not charred, so that we can still preserve that flavor from the grain, because that's what we're really interested in. The flavor from the grain, that licorice, peppery, spicy notes that we got in the spirit. And absolutely, you can taste in there. This is like nothing else we have ever made. So it's a really, really nice thing to be able to taste it with you guys today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob. So, thank you guys. Thank you so, so much. I cannot tell you how nervous I was to do this again after a few years. I will leave that to Amy later on. It's just been incredible to stand here and tell some stories and talk about the whiskies that you know, been able to prepare for this. Some unique whiskies, as I say. It's what we do. We make whiskey. And it is incredible to have this band of people who come and take such an interest in what we do. It is incredible, and we appreciate and hope we give you back what you deserve, because we appreciate all your coming here and listening to what we talk about, listening to what we do. So thank you all. So, if you've got one more round of applause in you, it's for the whole team here who've cleared this place and sort of filled glasses, made tasting mats and folded tablecloths, all that stuff. Thank you guys. Now, do we have a pipe band? There's a pipe band. Would you guys like to be piped along into the distillery? How many times in your life do you get to follow be in a marching pipe band? Not very often. So guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.